Good.
If I see lunch, I usually do stop and say, you guys are right.
Yeah.
Come out of this. So.
Yeah, we used to kind of do it where, I ain't gonna be able to make it tonight either. So if there's anything in the reports there that you have questions on, you know, I can just quickly answer, you know, I don't know all about it.
We'll take a quick look.
Yeah, I looked through it, I didn't see anything that stood out.
Same cast of characters.
The one on my road is like, it's like 2 pages now.
You go, Brad.
It has like 13 cards there.
I gotta go home anyway.
But he said like most of them you can put like a,
What's that?
just like some kind of deal, and
Yeah.
some tag that he can put on all of it.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean they're all right.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Yes, we.
Thank you.
I just don't want to tell you about my.
Well, yeah, it's like,
It's all.
I was trying to figure out which one is
Yeah, it's right on the end of Line Road. If you're going west, it's on the left-hand side.
So if I'm coming about from the golf course and going my first one on the,
It would be on the right.
On the right. okay, that stuff must be in the back.
Back it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you don't really know, okay,
No, you gotta look for it. So that tells me.
the neighbor or someone is having an issue with this, okay. Yeah, because I drove by, I was trying to see which, and I couldn't see all these, I just wasn't sure which.
And you could miss it. Yeah, that's why I say. It's. Move from high to better.
Yeah, do something.
Oh, man.
Or, yeah, do something. That's-
He's been threatening to put up a building. Do that. Wow.
Yeah, it's again at Sheets and across the street from Sheets.
Maybe some of us will move to the New Brothers at the other end of the bypass.
Oh, it cuts down there.
Yeah.
Is that finally open yet?
Yeah, it's open.
I know they had issues there and they couldn't for the longest time. It sat there.
Yeah, they were,
Yeah, started.
had some code complaints.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Something was going on.
Information.
Put a railroad track. They're really involved in any road. Like, I'm sure we'll bump the wall. Yeah, I did help them. Working for that organization today. That's just to figure that out.
So they finally got to release the details. I got this letter last night too. 222.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was an issue.
They sent a separate letter
April
for,
15th.
yeah.
They've been talking about that for 30 years. Why?
Yeah.
I mean,
But that's gonna go right through the middle of the township.
Wow.
I'll go drive just
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what that is.
Yeah, that's kind of how I want to
Then we don't have to try and fit it into 2 weeks span.
Yep.
4 weeks, whatever it is.
Yeah. 2 days,
That was that Keller Road request. I don't know if we got any, feedback on that. I know Scott Wrights was working on that.
Oh, where what's tied to the sewer? I was wondering about that, okay.
Yeah, I know there was some conversation between Brian and Scott Wrights on that one, but I don't know what transpired.
Are these all the extras at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Chris.
How are you?
Good.
Might be more people in the parking lot than there is in here. I assume they won't miss the meeting. I assume that too. Looking for Brian. Is Brian coming?
Yeah.
Better not wait for Brian.
Did Michelle happen to give you an agreement? A working agreement with the Mulch Township?
Yeah, and I asked her to try to get a change in that agreement.
Okay.
And she left a message with the solicitor agreement.
Oh, okay.
So there's a provision I don't like it.
Okay.
It cuts both ways. It says that
They don't charge for this.
Let's say, yeah, it seems like a lot, but
if
you're gonna spend a quarter of that just to.
there's any kind of damage to their personnel, if they come into Richmond, or their equipment, if they come into Richmond to do work, or there's a claim by a third party, like resident of damages,
And we better do something with
that it's always the responsibility of the municipality that had requested the help.
Okay.
What I don't like
that. I know a lot
about
of
that is
municipalities do
that
have, they do have a
if
moment.
there is negligence on the
Different
part
places.
of the person who's coming in to help,
Right.
Like one on a
I don't
trailer, and
think-
you hook it up and.
we should be responsible for it.
That's
Like
just
I said, it comes with
Right,
loads.
right. Okay.
If we're asked to go to Greenwich
Mm-hmm.
and our guys do something dumb
Mm-hmm.
and something goes wrong,
Right.
I think we should be responsible for that.
It is our fault. Right.
Yeah, I know we need that.
So I wanted some language to be added.
Okay. No, because I remember I sent it over to Michelle and she's like, okay, I'll have something for you Monday. I can check in. I catch
Well,
it on.
she did prepare it
Okay.
for approval tonight, but then when I responded, I was,
Seems like a lot.
Gotcha. No, that's fine. That's fine. I won't go back in and check again. I'll make sure I
Yeah.
touch base with her. on
I'm
tomorrow.
assuming she didn't care about that.
Okay.
Their solicitors.
It's a small one, you know.
Okay.
And I guess he didn't get back to me.
Yeah, we went a lot of 50s there.
I mean, we could
Yeah,
have a
kind of
motion
figure
for
out how big
approval,
it is, yeah,
subject
size
to my
wise.
satisfaction on my language.
Right, right,
If,
okay.
You know, if you guys wanted to start using it this month.
right.
20 KW tractor.
Fast tractor.
Got it.
Single.
Are you?
Single phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
road.
Yeah, mine opens on like, I
Okay,
think 30, up to 30, which is,
I
I
think
only have mine just
it's
to
already
run.
approved it,
I only have
Okay.
like for
Yeah.
the well pump, just a couple
it
of
was
things.
just hours.
The necessary.
Yeah, the necessary just to get by.
well, no,
Yeah,
they will have to reapprove it.
Fourth grade.
Right.
I mean, if we have some going about what it's
I
gonna
just say
say,
that you can run, what's that?
I would be fine with them starting to use it, even though it hasn't been finally approved like Richmond.
Okay,
Anyway, I can explain it to you.
Okay.
But I got the impression that this was supposed to happen in a hurry.
right.
You got a project?
Sorta, yeah.
Good evening.
Evening.
There's no way sheet.
Yeah, and I keep looking over there too.
All right, it's 7:00. We'll get started with the pledge allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so Brian couldn't be here this evening, so we're gonna go it on. All right, you said you got a sheet, doesn't it?
Correct.
All right, we'll start with approval of the minutes.
I looked them over, looked good to me.
Good, we? I'll make a motion to approve it.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
New business. Code enforcement. No Jeff tonight.
Make it, there's, I said it before, but if there's any questions, let me know. We'll get an answer.
I went through everything here, but didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary.
No, I still work with the guy on Line Road, and, yeah, on Park Road, and so.
I thought, matter of fact, these are all, I've been here before.
Right.
I didn't see anything on the other ones. So permits. Everything looks good to me.
Much like-
All right. Motion to be approved.
I will second.
All.
Aye.
SEO report. Here's another thing that rarely changes. None, none, and none.
I saw some citations were filed with Judge.
I did see that, yeah. What cycle are we in right now? The public cycle, are we in two?
Yes.
Okay. Not the small. All right. Make a motion.
I will second.
Police report.
Good evening.
Good
I am not Chief Walshafer. Mike Quinn from the Fleetwood Police Department, I'm representing Chief Walshafer tonight. I believe each one of the supervisors does have a copy of the actual report.
Yes, that's-
Okay. The top half, as you see, does cover all four of the areas that we cover: Fleetwood, Richmond, Topton, and West Manor. We'll just focus tonight on Richmond.
Okay.
Total miles between the borough and Richmond were 4,515. Patrol hours for the township were 166. Incidents were 108, which accounted for 54 hours. Crash investigations, there were 12. Traffic citations were 14. Non-traffic citations, 1. Vehicle stops were 19. Follow-up investigations by our criminal investigator were 52 hours. And there was no court time this month for Richmond. So breaking it down into the three districts for Richmond, Richmond North. We responded to a drug complaint involving several juveniles at a township residence. That's still an ongoing investigation. We were actively investigating a drug overdose death that occurred at a township resident. The victim was found to have overdosed on fentanyl, and that was around the same time frame when all the fentanyl overdoses had occurred in the city and then spread out to the surrounding areas. Fraud complaint, victim's bank account was compromised, resulting in a total loss of approximately $400. That's still under investigation. A larger fraud complaint where it was scammed online for approximately $38,000. The investigation was assigned to a criminal investigator who was able to determine that there were actually several victims for a total loss of $152,000. There is a suspect who's been identified, and he lives in Texas. Charges will be filed against him, and hopefully money will be recuperated. Police investigated a fraud complaint where the victim had suffered approximate loss of $10,000. Again, the CI Merkel is investigating that. District 3, which is the 222 corridor, retail theft at Sheets. Subject's been identified. A felony warrant has been issued for that subject. Disorderly complaint at Miss Silver Springs Medical. Intoxicated male arrived for an appointment. Apparently gave the staff a hard time about wearing a mask. The situation was resolved peacefully and no police involvement was required. A complaint at the Sheets for an underage male attempting to purchase alcohol with a fake ID. The male had fled the store prior to our arrival. Police investigated a report of a disorderly conduct at the medical center for a male refusing to wear a mask. The issue was resolved, no further police involvement. And another disorderly conduct at the medical center for a female patient who was refusing to leave, and the issue was resolved after our officers got involved. District 4, which is Richmond South, which would be everything south of 222. Township residents for an unwanted subject took the male into custody, and he actually had outstanding warrants. Was also found to be in possession of methamphetamines. Police investigated domestic assault with a male and a female. The adult male was taken into custody and charged with assault and drug possession. Investigating a theft that occurred at a township business where a victim's wallet was stolen from her purse. Several transactions were made on the victim's credit cards. And again, the criminal investigator, CI Merkel, is working on that case at the moment. Police were contacted by adult probation regarding a subject wanted on a felony warrant that lives at a township residence. He also had been spotted around the Willow Creek Elementary School. So we've been attempting to pick him up and to serve the warrant. So far, it's without success. He's not at the address that was listed for Richmond Township. Our 2 new part-time employees should be released from the FTO program in May. The new body camera equipment has come in that will replace the current body cams that we're using. This is definitely a much better system, and we'll have better night vision as well as during the day type stuff. And it's also going to be integrated with the car camera systems, so that way everything is by the same manufacturer and functions the same way. And the last one, the speed timing device lines will be marked and repainted. Probably remember that there are various locations on township roads, and it's my understanding that that is actually a coordinated effort between Richmond, Ruskin Manor, and the borough to paint those lines like we did before. And the last thing I would add is the fact that Officer Folk, who is our truck inspector, has done 2 basically 6 to 8 hour days where he's done truck inspections along the 222 corridor here that have resulted in vehicles or trucks being either placed out of service or other citations that have been filed on drivers. We try to do the truck inspections once a month for sure, if not twice a month, and focusing on the 222 corridor at least one of those 2 times. And between the borough Rusk Manor and Topton for the other day, if we can get it in. So,
Very good. No questions for me?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. Fire company report. Original, Walnut Town, anything?
The only thing I have to add is, we were approached by, a resident from Main Creek about using our tank truck for Relay for Life, on May 21st at the Kutztown Fairgrounds. Just so you guys are aware, our breast cancer tanker will be going out there for, I don't know what time they went out there. She's gonna get a hold of me then, but it will not be out of service. She was told that if we get a call for it, it will leave. But as long as it does not get a call, it will gladly show up there and, you know, they can do whatever they need to do with it, take pictures or whatever.
Keeps it in the neighborhood, I do.
Yes, exactly.
Anything else?
Yep.
Motion to approve the annual Sally 5K race. This is something I think we do annually. Um, There was some associated releases I remember that we needed. Do we have those? Have we used those?
They have not given those to us yet. They said they would do that the day of the race.
Okay. All right, I don't see the reason why we shouldn't approve pending those.
Right.
Those releases. Great. I will make a motion to approve that pending the necessary documentation.
No second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the Hincappy. Is this something
Brand new.
brand?
They actually sent this out to the wrong municipality and didn't realize it was in Richmond Township. So they said it
And
was
where is this? Like Saucony Creek?
Looks like it's only for a mile.
Yeah.
A mile.
That's it.
for 1 mile, they'll be in our township.
Okay,
About 15 minutes.
from 8:30 to 9:45. And then looks like they supplied the certificate of liability.
Yes.
Is everything good there, Chris?
We did ask them to sign paperwork too. Did we get back everything?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I was satisfied.
Okay. I'll make a motion, we approve that.
I was second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Review the letter received by PennDOT regarding the 222 widening project. I think this was supposed to come out earlier, wasn't it? I thought initially they were gonna do this in mid-April. I got the same letter yesterday, out of the clear blue sky.
I don't remember seeing the letter, I don't know, I think their schedule has been pushed back quite a bit on most places that have one quarter there.
But this is basically upgrading 222 from that new circle that they just put in there, that's that Schaefer Road, I believe.
Schaefer to the bypass.
Yeah, and all the way to the Kutztown bypass, so it's gonna come right through the middle of the township here. But they're not releasing any details until May 18th, so I guess this is just to let us know that they're gonna do something, but what we don't know yet. Because nothing is available until they have their own little powwow there at Kutztown at the university. So let me just go to, but I think at this time, we don't have to take any other action on this until we know what they're actually doing. Did you get anything else on this?
No, it was
Other
just
than that-
basically a letter just stating that if you wanted to attend the meeting, you can attend the meeting, just to let the public know that they're having a meeting for the widening.
Okay, so there was nothing other than that?
No, nope.
Okay. And then I don't think we need to have any other action on this at this point. Motion to approve resolution 2214 working agreement with Greenwood Township.
Now, I want to explain a little bit about this. And, feel free to jump in. I was contacted by the solicitor for Greenwich Township about what he described as the mutual desire of the two road crews of the two townships to have the ability to share equipment and personnel to be able to do projects together. And there is an agreement which was prepared by the Greenwich solicitor, which is an intermunicipal agreement. And then each municipality needs to adopt a resolution to approve that agreement. I reviewed that agreement, and there is one aspect of it that I'm not satisfied with the current wording on. And what that involves is an indemnification obligation. And as drafted, it would require the municipality in which the work is being done to indemnify the other municipality which is supplying manpower and equipment from any damages that occur to the equipment that's being brought into the township, any injuries to the workers who come into the township, and any claims by third parties. Now, there is a provision that says that each municipality's workers' comp coverage will apply to their employees no matter which municipality they're working in. So that's fine, but the more general liability concern, I would prefer that the agreement would have a carve out for negligence by the operators or defects in the equipment that's being brought in. So in other words, if Greenwich employees or Greenwich employee equipment comes into Richmond and either the Greenwich employees do something negligent or their equipment is not in good working order, I don't think that we should be indemnifying Greenwich Township from the consequences of that. Likewise, I think Richmond should be responsible when we take our equipment and crew into Greenwich Township if our employees are negligent or our equipment is not in good working order. So I've asked for an adjustment to that language. I understand that there's a desire for this agreement to be in effect as soon as possible so that work can be done. If the Board of Supervisors is in agreement to the concept that I have described, I would recommend that you consider a motion to conditionally approve this arrangement tonight, subject to my satisfaction on the language. We do have all the other terms and conditions. Basically, we're responsible for, providing the crew and the manpower. The projects would be approved by the Board of Supervisors, and that's how it's worded. I don't know if you're aware of that. So the two roadmasters would cooperate in determining what projects and when the projects would be done and what equipment would be applied. But as written, the agreement says that there is a sign off by the Board of Supervisors before any of these activities would occur. So you are not losing control of the process, but it does put into place, again, an arrangement that would effectively allow more equipment and more personnel to be applied to projects in the two townships, which I think in concept is a good idea.
Is there somewhat of a sense of urgency? Is there something you want to?
We plan on using a paver on Berry Lane, Berry Road,
So,
before HUK started their paving work.
okay. Well, then I don't see there's a reason why we should approve it, except with the exception, change some language in the agreement.
Yeah, I would suggest you consider a motion to adopt the resolution, subject to the solicitor's review of the final wording of the agreement.
Okay. I'll make that motion that we accept it. Pending the motion that was set forward there.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Old business. Sewer filing for 2255 Keller. I believe that's what this is all about.
I'm trying to refresh my memory of what we talked about last month. Did the board want more details on what would actually be involved in the connection? Was that the
Was
case?
this the one where it was,
This is in Ruskin Manor Township.
Yes.
It's one
Single
property
person.
away, right? One property away from our sewer line.
right,
I think we asked LTL to look into it further today.
yeah, I think.
Scott Wrights was looking into it,
Right.
yeah.
And it looks like we have to extend the 8-inch with the new manhole,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's where they have to tie their lateral.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, he said there is an agreement that's needed between Ruskin Manor and our township here. We just have not gotten that agreement yet. And finding out the cost of it as well,
Yeah.
and who's gonna be responsible for it.
Well, I would, well, we don't have an authority. I mean, I think I mentioned that to the board. So that means that we need to tread carefully in terms of providing service outside of municipal boundaries. Because we don't want to become subject to PUC regulation of our sewer system. But if you only go to one property beyond the municipal boundary, I'm not concerned that the PUC is going to jump in and claim jurisdiction. But if there is new main and a manhole required, there's gonna be some expense. So I don't know if there's any cost estimate on this. I don't see a cost estimate. That would be the next question I would have is, what would this cost? And, you know, when we started this discussion, it was my expectation that the property owner seeking service would be solely responsible for the costs. But if there's new main and new manhole, I don't know if that's
It's gonna get expensive.
going to, I don't know what it's gonna cost.
Some of that's street restoration to go with it as well, it's all that, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping this was just gonna be a long lateral.
Yeah, seems like there's more involved.
Do you wanna ask for a cost?
That's what I would think the next step would be to go to Scott and see.
I think A, we should get a cost estimate, and then B, find out who's paying for it. I mean, I would think the end user should be responsible for some of it.
Well, especially since it's not a township resident, we're kind of
But
bending over backwards. I mean, what, the consequence of the township not agreeing to cooperate with this extension of public sewer would be that this property owner is going to need to have a holding tank, and they're gonna be pumping a lot.
Which are currently doing now. That's why
Yes.
So there's, it's gonna, you know, they're gonna spend quite a bit of money regardless.
Was the rate a discussion before, or was that pretty well determined as well?
Well, the rate, you mean,
What would be the rate for that revenue, or is that an
I think it would be consistent with what they would be paid now. You know,
Yeah, I
I
mean-
don't know that you could,
well, we could have a separate sewer district
I didn't know.
for
if that
one
was-
resident in Ruskin Township hypothetically. And you know, you could amortize that construction costs over a period of time if you're willing to finance it. You know,
yeah, I see where you're going with that, yeah. Well, I think the next best thing would be to just get a cost estimate and make them, the customer aware of the fact that there will be some expense involved with this for somebody. And then we just have to figure out who's, you know, maybe after, that might change some minds, maybe not, but.
Okay.
And I guess, who would do that cost estimate? We just get a private contractor and we'll look at it.
well, I would
I would delegate that to
Scott, yeah.
And he might be able to come up with.
Yeah, it looks like it's an 8-inch main with so many feet with the manual. I mean, you should be able to.
That's something you can probably figure out. He's done enough of it.
Right.
With the-
So you want to make a motion to
Yep.
do that?
I'll make a motion that we have Scott, get some prices on this and pass that information on to the end user and go from there.
I will second.
All in favor? All right. Discuss the Leonhardsville Bridge tolling litigation. Is there anything new on that?
I don't have any new update. I mean, whenever I've gotten anything, I've passed it on, at least to Brian. I don't know if I've shared, there's the voluminous pleadings that I've received copies of from the attorneys. There's still motions involved. The last I heard was they were still debating about additional parties joining the litigation.
That's,
And I don't think they've gotten beyond that point. So meanwhile, PennDOT continues its plan to implement this
oh, they're
bridge
moving
tolling,
forward. Oh,
but it's only in one direction. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah,
They've decided that they will only toll, and I'm not sure, I don't remember now. If Brian were here,
I think it was westbound.
what's that?
I think I read it was westbound traffic.
So they're not gonna toll the east, but they're gonna toll the west. So I guess they use half as much tolling equipment and they figure they'll get enough revenue that way. But anyway, so there are two things happening. One is that PennDOT is continuing to work on the project, and at the same time, the litigation is grinding forward, but there's, not any determination about the outcome at this point.
Well, we'll move on. Where are we? Jay's on.
Mr. Awad, did he come tonight? He told us he had a holiday last month and he wouldn't attend last month due to the holiday, so tonight was the night. All right. He told me that he was going to appeal the board's rejection of the termination of his land development plan. I said, why don't you come talk to the board about whatever your concerns
Be a good place to start.
So obviously he's not here. Let me reach out. This is very frustrating, but I will reach out to him again and remind him that, he needs to have a good reason in order for the board to change its mind about rejecting his plan. And meanwhile, I would not issue the refund of the escrow we're holding for the inspections. We still have a couple $1,000s in escrow for inspections. So let me reach out to him and remind him that he said he would be here tonight.
All right. That takes care of all businesses. Now we'll go to the engineer's report. Solars.
Okay, and that's, I think the bigger part of the crowd here is for that discussion. At the planning commission meeting, the Alliance Solar Farm group attended. We discussed the letter at that time. There were some motions made and recommended by the planning commission. Those were basically for waivers associated with the plan. 3 of those waivers we can discuss. There was one that had to do with the fee in lieu of, as noted on the agenda there. That kind of tied into another comment on the review letter as well, which, as it was stated in the review letter, it had to do with the drainage from the south side of the property, draining to the railroad crossing, passing underneath there. The other waiver that kind of tied in with that same comment was the requirement for any right-of-way widening or, as stated in the ordinance, stormwater improvements. The waiver for that item was made conditional upon the discussion with the Board of Supervisors for that being when we brought up the improvements under the railroad bridge, and I think we talked about it in some detail here, that it's probably easier for the township and the capacity of the township to do the improvements under the railroad bridge as opposed to having them do a project which may require them putting in permits in place with approvals with the railroad. So that was the discussion, but since there wasn't really any details, we led to conditionally recommending the waiver and having a site meeting. We had that site meeting last Friday. Sam was present as well as some PC members and their team. I think I emailed you guys on Friday. There was a cost estimate from a contractor that was looking at the same thing as we were discussing. I just based off of other drainage projects that we've had, paving projects that we've had of similar size, kind of came up with a cost estimate as well. We provided it to their group, and that's kind of where we're at right now with the fee in lieu, with some more substantive numbers for the fee in lieu of. That's what we have there. We provided that to them on Friday as well, at the same time to the supervisors. So, kind of where we're at with the discussion. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to review that or look at it. I think the one thing I would say is the contractor's estimate, it kind of reflected some of the discussion we had in the field as well, that the township had a desire to address some additional problems out there that weren't necessarily related to the solar farm side of the Weaver's Road improvements. So I think that's some of the discrepancy between the two numbers there. So.
So the Andy Miller from the MPO law firm on behalf of Fieldstone. So the applicant is willing, and I think we had Scott's estimate of I think it was 10,500 was the original, and then the written estimate came out at I think 11,000.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, that was really basically seen in the past month. The paving just continued to go up. It was really just a reflection of that. The original cost that we discussed in the field that day was about, I think we said 10 to 11,000. So that's what he's saying, 10,500 when we discussed this.
So Heelstone would be prepared to do a fee in lieu of 11,500 for that work there. I think the consensus was that the discussion was good at the site, and that would go a significant way to the township being able to make some improvements there. Heelstone has gone above and beyond on a lot of the other stormwater management on the site already. I think we're managing a lot of what's coming off of the Ace hardware, which isn't really stormwater being generated by the project. They are doing quite a bit of soil amendments on the site and some other things on the site to manage the stormwater there. So, but they're also prepared to try to address this issue in this way. I think it's a reasonable solution.
The work that you're anticipating, Scott, can it be done within the existing right of way?
Yes, there was some discussion about the swale that leads from the railroad and silt that in that swale that's beyond the right of way. But I think that's conversations that would be better had with the Berks Conservancy and others that may have been involved in the previous project. In the discussions we had on site, as he said, there was a willingness that if they're out there for the construction, is that something that developed along the way, they could be interested in simply help. The amount of work that involved was pretty minimal. But if we spoke to what was just in the estimate, that was all within the right of way.
I saw Gary's letter.
Yeah, Gary's letter was really not necessarily in reference to the drainage here at the railroad bridge and the discussion of that fee in lieu of, but it was more of
Overall.
the stormwater requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, that estimate that we got there, now keep in mind, that did not cover the concrete work for the curbing that we're gonna put in there to make that permanent. But we're willing to do some cost sharing on that because this is something that we want to make it that we don't have to touch it again for a long time. So the number that we were looking at there basically is to do the excavating and the paving. We would do the curbing, the guys would do that in-house, and we would cover the cost of that. But we don't want to revisit this project for a while. So that portion of what we're looking at from you people should cover what we want to do there. And the fact that we're going to add some more water to the equation, I think we can come to agreement on that. If we get some cost sharing on that to help us correct that problem. So what do we need to do?
Well, these waivers, I think we have to have an understanding that these 4 waivers that are discussed in the review letter are separate from Gary's recent comments. I mean, that's a separate issue. So, some municipalities would say, until we're satisfied with everything, we won't grant any waivers. But I think that we have been very reasonable throughout this process, and if we have a satisfactory resolution on the subject matter of the 4 waivers, I would recommend that you consider a motion to approve those 4 waivers, subject to the fee in lieu being paid by the developer. But I want everyone to understand that this is separate from the remaining topic of the stormwater issues that Gary was concerned about.
Should we have something in writing before we approve it, or can we just?
Well, your approval would be conditioned upon them. What I would typically do to document a fee in lieu is we have a very brief agreement that would say what the purpose of the money is in order for their, I don't like a check to be delivered and there's no document that explains why we're receiving that payment. So I think there should be a short agreement.
I have a letter that I can give you just from Heelstone saying that they would make that contribution. But the other thing is we could probably put something like this in the development agreement you're working on currently if you.
You're right. It could be a paragraph in that agreement. Do you have a letter? Do you want to share that or?
Yeah, and this just summarizes that there was a meeting and it says at the end that they'll make a contribution of $1,500 for those improvements.
This letter indicates the developer's willingness to pay the fee in lieu in the amount of $11,500, and it references the waiver for road widening. So I'm satisfied that that's specific to that waiver request.
I would say at the planning commission, when we went over the the requests that were made, there were the requests for the waivers. I think the way they made the motion was just in reference to the letter. It was A, C, and D. They were all in favor of those recommendations, and then B was conditional on the discussion of fee in lieu of. There was also the request for the preliminary final approval conditional upon the review letter, but that was at that time without the review from Gary being completed for the stormwater, as well as the just to get a review that was still pending with Conservation District. It was a decision not to act upon that request. So I think that to that point, it was kind of being dealt with separately as well.
What do you, is it your understanding that the planning commission wanted further discussion on the one-step review process or not?
For the conditional approval or the waiver?
For the waiver to allow the one step, isn't that the first waiver request?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, they were fine with that. Yeah.
Oh, that's what I thought you were talking about. Were you talking about?
The plan approval and how the stormwater comments were really held separately.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to that point, I know the board has had a chance to kind of comment on where the stormwater stands at this point. That was just before Gary had been able to kind of finalize the comments and issue those. He had issued those. And I know that I feel like the response did reflect the feeling from the board. With that said, I don't know if, since we are with the supervisors, if you had any questions.
Well, let's see if the board's willing to dispose of that.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
We'll go down to waiver list here, I guess. Should we make this, if we were to accept this waiver, should we make it subject to a written agreement or?
Yeah, I would say subject to a written agreement, which could be part of the development agreement, and payment of the fee.
I'll make that motion that we accept the waiver, subject to the written agreement and payment.
That would be waiver. It's B in the review letter, which is sections 801.10 and 801.15.
801.10 and 801.15.
Yeah, those are the ones about Weaver Road improvements or lighting.
Now we'll make that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
And then we also have the waivers for the one-step review, for the vertical curb, and for the sidewalk. Those are separate waivers.
And were they something?
Yeah, I'm looking at the,
If you go to the bottom of the second page, I think it states
the
like.
draft cover letter.
It's just all here.
Oh, yeah.
You're on the wrong.
Yeah, there it is.
Let me just one.
Yeah, you're still on the wrong document.
Still.
That's, I think you're looking at Gary's stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. Look at, no, that's it, the craft engineering, there you go.
Oh, I saw it.
It's on the bottom of page 2, 1A, and on the top of page 3, B, C, and D. And what we've been talking about was item B at the top of page 3. But then we also have A, C, and D.
Yeah, we got that. Let's say.
So A was the handling of the plan of both preliminary and final, the one-step processes. As referenced. The other two were for the waiver of frontage on the road for curb and sidewalk.
there was a curb and sidewalk.
Well, there isn't, which was kind of consistent with.
It's in the ordinance.
Yeah, these are,
Requirements that, for every project in the township.
okay. Here again, is there any way to come up with a graphic? I don't see any for curbing the sidewalk.
No, I think the other section that we already discussed and voted on had
The bulk of the meeting.
it had the idea of the widening the stormwater improvements.
So that would pertain to just be here.
Yes.
What what you voted on a moment ago is just B.
Right.
A, C, and D are still.
But I was
on the
wondering
table.
what was up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not.
That's okay. Yeah, that was just A, so B would be the waiver for the sidewalk and the
Curb, sidewalk, and a one-step review.
Right. Well, I would be okay with that.
Yes, I am as well.
And they were all recommended by the planning commission.
Planning.
The planning commission, that's what I was reading here earlier.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the waiver. Who wasn't successful by the planning commission.
For A, C, and D, right?
AC, and
No second.
all in favor?
And the only other discussion, I just wanted to make sure with the comments issued that, being here in front of the supervisors, if there were questions, I think they were just as familiar as Gary was with the intent of the zoning ordinance and, the past discussions. So if there were any comments, I just wanted to take the opportunity now if we had a chance.
Yeah, so we did want to get the board's feedback on, so far, Heelstone in the prior plan submissions was focusing on, and I think has managed the stormwater runoff from the hardware store that was coming onto the site, and has also done quite a bit of soil amendments on the site to get infiltration on the site. The one thing that wasn't shown and was outside the area of disturbance on the prior submissions of the stormwater plans was the NRCS swale that comes down through the property. And that was draining off-site stormwater, conveying off-site stormwater across the property from a large amount of acreage, I believe to the south of the project. So far in the plan submissions, that hadn't been touched, and there weren't any comments saying that there was an expectation that that would be touched. And I think typically you would manage the stormwater that bypass or that flow through. You would be managing what's on the site, what you're disturbing on the site, and that wouldn't typically be touched. The comment that came back from Gary Kraft this time was that runoff volume should be managed down or reduced by 20%. And that would be draining, he's estimating that there's approximately 180 acres off-site that would have to be managed from that. That's a significant modification in the plan. That's going to take quite a bit of work to go back and recalculate all of those detention basins and resize them. They'll probably have to be significantly larger in size. Before we go back and undertake any exercise like that, we also wanted to get feedback from the board whether that was the intent in adopting the ordinance. I guess secondarily, whether if we manage the stormwater coming off of the hardware store, is that resolving most of the problem that was on the Floyd Kurtz Road on the other side of Fleetwood Lyons Road, and then along with that, does the board, is it really the board's desire to take that swale, and what you're gonna end up doing is trying to dam up that swale as it comes across the property, and is that something that the township actually wants, is, you know, much larger
Short answer,
stormwater facilities?
yes.
Okay.
Let me give you my insight on this.
Okay.
This was one of the reasons that we looked at this favorably to begin with, because we looked at it as a solution to a problem that has been going on. That was part of the agreement initially, that we were going to control that stormwater regardless of where it came from. The people downstream of that on the other side of the Fleetwood lines, they don't really care where it comes from. And you have everybody on the north side of that highway doesn't look favorably on this project to begin with. So they're not going to have to look very far the next time we get a heavy rain. And even if it's their perception that the water flow is increased, I'm never going to hear the end of it, because I already hear it all the time. So part of this whole thing from the get-go was to, I'm not saying eliminate, but reduce the flow coming down, or retain it and reduce it regardless of where it comes from. I almost get the idea that sometimes that this portion of it is being overlooked, that the water through that grass waterway was going to be ignored as just existing. But that wasn't the deal from the get-go. The deal was, you got to deal with that water as part of this deal. And I don't care if you're going to dam up everything, you know, on that side of the river. And like I say, we don't want to stop it. We just want to make the flow manageable downstream from there. Because that affects, I'm 6 farms downstream from that, and I get that water. So it would do far less damage if we could control that water. Instead of having a huge flow, we can contain it to something that we can manage in a waterway. And that's what I did. I have a waterway the whole length of my property to deal with that water, and these guys are going to probably have to do that at some point too. But the last thing I want to have is the first big storm we get after this thing is done, and this water deluges down the other side. Believe me, I'm never going to hear the end of it. And we were we talked to these people, we know these people, they're neighbors. And they always stress the importance of make sure they deal with the water. It's a big thing. The water's a big thing. So in order for us to move forward with this, we have to be pretty comfortable that what you're doing is going to remedy the problem to some degree. You know what I mean? And I don't care how big a basin you put a standpipe in or release it so long, and then have, you know, an overspill somewhere where if it gets totally out of hand, you know, there's only so much you can do. And I get that. But this has to be addressed. And it's not negotiable as far as I'm concerned. And I think I speak for the board and Brian here, because he was very adamant that I get his feelings across to you as well.
Okay, and that's valuable input for us. One of the concerns too is that by trying to manage this, we could need waivers to some other stormwater requirements that because this is going to impact some of those other calculations. And if this is a primary concern, we would just ask that, you know, there be some, if that's necessary, that, you know, be taken into consideration as to why those other waivers would potentially be needed. The calculations have to be reviewed, and obviously some planning is going to have to be done. But that was one of the initial concerns as well. So you know, we would just ask, you know, consideration. Obviously, we don't have those right now, but that, you know, that could be something that this triggers, and you know, we'll make an effort to do it. We would ask, I think, Chris, you mentioned to me, and Scott, you may have mentioned that Gary has an idea of what he thinks would address this or satisfy him on the issue. And certainly our engineers have to do that planning and do that work in the calculations. But it would be helpful for us to see that or be able to get a sense of that in order to move in a direction that, that he may be looking for or expecting.
Gary did share with me some sketches, but they were without the benefit of calculations, I believe. So, if Gary were here, what I think Gary would say is, his job is to review, not to design your project. So I think, if the board is okay with this, I would encourage you to, have conversations, your engineers with Gary, see what you can get out of him. But ultimately, he's going to look for you to design something that approximates the objectives of the ordinance, and then, he'll review on the basis of the new design.
And I think part of what you're asking for is, there's an additional requirement that was part of the ordinance about the half inch of runoff over the entire site. We created a volume which was throughout the process negotiated on what's attainable, what's feasible under the construction standards. And I think that was a number that until the iterations back and forth and something was proposed, I think at the meeting, for the PC meeting, it was about 71, 72. With the last comment, I think there was another, I feel like there was still something else that could be done here. So that number is still changing a little. And to that point, I'm not too sure that there is an idea what that number is, just like you're saying. I think it's what is feasible there, but I think the point of the email and the review letter to this last iteration was it's supposed to be 20%, but we're looking at 0 at this point in time. So I kind of building off of what you had said, Chris, that not too sure. He did suggest certain kind of design options, but again, it was just suggestions without.
Just enlarging some of the basics. He didn't really go into details.
Yeah.
Can I make a quick comment? Paul Hughes, Kim Ward. A couple of things. I think the last point you're making there, I think is really important to understand that it's a little bit tricky when we're trying to make a best effort. We're used to, this is the number, hit the number, and that's it, right? We're trying to make a best effort, but then we submit something, we're not entirely sure what that is. So I hope you appreciate that we're trying, and the idea that we may have overlooked a particular issue, I think, is not entirely fair. We have an extremely significant amount of stormwater management that, while it doesn't catch what gets into the extreme uphill side of that swale, it manages everything else that comes into the swale that we can catch kind of from the sides. I think we have 4 basins on the property that are slowing everything into a trickle that go into that swale. So I think there's a lot of effort that's been done. That being said, I understand where we could possibly make some more improvements, and by actually blocking that swale off, that's really what we want to look at doing. We can certainly look at that. What I'm concerned about, and not to get too far into the weeds with everybody, but maybe just with Scott, I think what we're concerned about is we're really looking at a big macro drainage area management, which makes it difficult to say, well, let's manage a 1-year storm or a 2-year storm. So I think what we'd be looking at is maybe for some grace where we can manage the bigger storms and really make sure that we can mitigate where people would feel problems, right, with big major rain events. But if we're reducing in some finite, minute way, a 2-year storm to a 1-year storm, or a 5-year storm to a 2-year storm, those kind of things, that's trivial. It sounds like that to me, that's trivial compared to the issues that are actually being experienced out there when you have these major rain events, which we could manage to 80% of what are coming out. But if we set up an outlet structure that way, it becomes very difficult to manage those smaller storms. And that's where we might come back and say, hey, listen, we can make this 80% work, but we might need a waiver for some peak rate reduction requirement that doesn't necessarily have a practical application with the issue that we're dealing with when we're trying to manage 300 to 400 acres of runoff. So I think that's maybe where we would go back to our client and say, I think we can work with Gary to take what we hope would be this this last extra step, because in our mind, we've done a few of these iterations now. And if we can understand that maybe we can get some grace and potentially a formal waiver on something, and we'll look at all the numbers and figure out how best to make those work, of course. But something, and it might include also that volume reduction requirement. If we get to say 80% of that, but we can't get quite all the way, but Gary feels we've done everything we can, we might be looking for some kind of grace on that, those kind of requirements too, as long as we feel like we've really practically satisfied the intent of physically managing and holding back and storing on site and slowly releasing what gets down there. But it might come down to some of the details, whether we can really make all the numbers work. We can still make a really dramatic improvement, I think.
And I don't think there's any reason to expect we wouldn't give you some relief on that. But we have to address the main problem, which is that pass-through water that comes through there and down that existing waterway. Because that's the one I'm worried about.
Understood.
So if we address that, I don't see that we wouldn't, consider some relief on the other. I'm not saying anything for sure.
Sure.
But I mean, we're gonna try and work with you, but we have to address what we originally, what the original agreement was.
I understand.
Excuse me, I have to
Can
change
you
my
just
hand
flip that
on
one
my tape.
over?
Just flip it over.
Yeah.
All right, we're back in business again.
Well, I actually have one more request, and I just have to do this. When we've submitted in the past, we've gone through a couple iterations with planning commissions, and it's been a little bit difficult getting what has been deemed to be the critical review from Gary. And we've had to push back a few meeting cycles. And I know we've had this interesting experience of a lot of cooperation, but then when these meeting cycles come, that's a lot of pushback on our clients. And we want to get this right just as much as you guys want to get this right. But I would just appreciate on behalf of my client, any influence that the board can have to just see when we do get something worked out and we get something submitted, that we can get a review in a timely fashion so that we don't have something that we submit and we think maybe we fit a deadline and it's, boxed up sitting in the office and Scott's even got it. And then we find out that maybe it didn't get looked at by Gary. So we have to move back on. It's a little bit frustrating. I understand everyone's very busy these days, of course.
Yeah,
But if there's anything we can do, that'd be much appreciated.
you guys know Gary's hours, days are basically Monday, Tuesdays, so coming into, say, the last planning commission meeting, it came in on a Wednesday before the planning commission, so we didn't have a chance to look at it. So it was, the timing,
So I
time
guess,
is definitely both
yeah,
ways.
I was gonna say, your submittals, timing of your submittals are key. They can't come in, days, hours before the meeting. They have to have time for him to review.
And we've had a late submittal, and we've also had what we thought was an on-time submittal, and then it turned into let's push it back another month because we haven't seen it. So we appreciate we're doing everything we can to get things in on time.
And I get
we'd
it,
like to
I've
see
been
it
on the
go
other
both
side of
ways.
the same
Absolutely.
situation, but we'll do our best
We'll
to,
definitely work with
yeah.
And we will do our best as well. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we are hopeful to be back at the planning commission later this month and then back in front of the board at the June meeting, hopefully for a conditional approval. So we'll work as quickly as we can to address these remaining comments.
I can't emphasize enough how important that pass-through water situation is. We have to address that.
Okay. And that's good feedback for us. We
Okay.
get it.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't think we have anything else right now.
Okay.
Appreciate the time. Thank you for meeting now. Last Friday was a good conversation, so I'm glad that Scott and Sammy are able to be there. So appreciate
Okay.
making that work.
Yeah, I think we came up with some good solutions.
I agree.
I'm pretty confident that solve that problem, then we'll work on the other problem. We'll get it right.
We'll get them on it.
Very good. All righty.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for that, guys.
Thank you.
I think I have one more thing on the list there, if you don't want to jump into it. It's kind of a follow-up on the-
Didn't step on the floor. Last meeting, my book. It's not more important.
So the Willow Crest subdivision, basically we had to walk through with the developer and the paving contractor was there as well. They are very soon to be planning to try to do some of the paving, very soon to try to clean up the pond as well. Until they came in,
Yes.
they have some grading, soil amendments to do in the basin that, until they did that, they weren't jumping in to fix the pipe. They fenced it off. And although it'd be nice if they got in there, it made a lot of sense to mobilize it because it was gonna be soon. The only part of that I was just gonna bring up is they had two comments that I just think is worth discussing here. I don't necessarily know if it's any kind of action, but they have a grass, well, it's actually curbed, but the median, when you first enter the development, they were asking, is that something that that the township wants to stay? I guess they've had some pushback on other developments that when it came time for dedication and the final review, for plowing reasons, they didn't necessarily like that median, or the township just.
There was a question about who was gonna maintain that too, wasn't there?
The island, itself, yes.
Yeah.
What is this, a boulevard? I don't know what this looks like.
What's that? It's a boulevard style for probably
So you
about,
have curb street, curb grass, curb street, curb.
It separates
exactly.
the,
There's
and
like
then
a grass
medians.
island,
I bet you
right in the middle.
100 feet long.
I mean, it looks good, so you have to actually be able to.
Yeah, and
I
that
mean,
question
there's-
comes in for what Robbie's saying, who's made
If you
it.
pave it, you have to repave it.
Yeah,
It costs some money to pave it.
and
And
then
there's some stormwater benefit.
who's mowing the grass?
I've been trying to find that out for 2 years. I have no idea.
Okay.
Supposedly there's some sort of agreement with the Fleetwood School District.
Oh, the school district.
That's what I hear, but
Is that a note on-
I don't know.
Not necessarily directly on the plan that spoke to that, and I didn't, when I was looking through it, I was looking for other notes since I talked to Robbie about this, I haven't had a chance to go back through and look specifically for
I
it.
don't remember it being in
But-
the agreement.
So all the property, I would say north of the houses between crisscross, right? And where the houses begin, there's that long strip.
Yeah.
All the fields and the property there is going to be dedicated to the school district. I believe is the agreement there. I haven't seen this, but it's noted on the plans that that's what's gonna happen, so assuming that's true, there's still the question of the township right of way. The one side has a sidewalk leading up to it, and then there's the mowing of anything, and I think mowing up to the curb makes sense that it's whoever's maintaining the property. But the question is, if they jumping into the township roadway and do that? I don't know if it was addressed specifically by no or developers agreement or other, but that and the shoveling of the sidewalk, the question is, does that all fall on the school?
Yeah, it's
It almost seems appropriate, but the island, maybe that's the
because
only
we discussed this before,
discussion.
snow
point.
removal. There was no consensus on who was responsible
For the sidewalk.
for the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But if they're gonna dedicate that to the school district. I could
Well,
just-
I think
Maybe that's part of the
I think
agreement,
it goes with
dedicated,
the
they
property.
take it over.
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't have an ordinance, we can make an ordinance that, the property owner adjacent to sidewalk is responsible for it. A lot of more developed communities have an ordinance like that.
Yeah, there might be some wisdom in doing that. Not that I don't think that we're gonna see much, well, But in this case, it's kind of like a gray area. And if if everything else is gonna be the school district's responsibility, they would be the property owner once they dedicate it, right?
Yeah, but is that sidewalk gonna be within the right of way or not?
Yeah,
Does
that's
the right of
nice.
way go to the
I-
curb or is it beyond the curb?
Without looking at it
Because,
specifically. I think it is.
Off the center of the road, you think it would be
I think,
included in the right
I
of
think
way.
they would adjust that accordingly to have the sidewalk in it. That would just kind of reflect what we typically see.
Wasn't there a bit of that sidewalk missing too? It's not
No, that
continuous.
was, so that was,
It
that
only
was,
goes to a certain point.
it was discussed that, from what Gary had said, there was a meeting where he brought that up. It was shown to come up to the end of the boulevard area there. It turns west and then it hits the crossing that we've talked about before with the signage and the striping. It continued further west past that. And the discussion was, does it need to continue further? And Gary said at the meeting, the discussion,
We decided not
Supervisors said
Okay.
that
I
there's no
don't
reason
remember
to.
where that whole thing was.
With that connection, at least you have that connection to the development. So,
Can we check with the developer as to what the plans were for who's gonna maintain? I'm sure they had some plan going forward.
yeah, I'll look at the plans and I think we look at the.
I think we should tell them what the answer to that question is.
We could, yeah.
They'll be interested for the next 18 months, 20 months if they get done paving and look to go through that dedication
Well, I
process.
think the boulevard is the harder question, I think.
Yeah, I
The
think
sidewalk, I think, is easy. The sidewalk is, the right of way should go to the curb, and the sidewalk should be the property owner, the adjacent property owner's responsibility. But the boulevard grass, that's,
Now, I'm not sure. I think that might end up, if it's not clearly defined and it isn't a gray area, that it's just in a discussion with the school district to see if we might be able to, while you're there, as opposed to having the township mobilized and all that
Just to move that little strip there, yeah.
the year.
I mean, first of all, are you okay with
well, remember, we
plowing that?
we agreed not to charge them for collection of amusement tax.
That's right.
So maybe we could bargain this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if we told them that we weren't gonna charge them for collection of amusement tax. But if we,
For the Fleetwood School District? You already wrote that letter and sent that out?
Yeah, I was at our last meeting.
oh, we can remind them of that when we ask them to mow the
Yeah.
grass.
Hey Rob, is there trees as well?
Trees and mulch.
So there's mulch trees in the middle of the meeting as well. So a little bit more of a, just another twist of the responsibility.
Trees to me smell maintenance.
I think all the other trees on that project are outside of the right of way. I'm almost positive, because that was part of the discussion we had when we did the walkthrough. They hadn't done all the trees, most people had waited. Extremely-
Yeah, I guess they had their
It's
options.
extremely windy on that.
Trees are no trees.
Well, I think the plan needs to be scrutinized to look for
Yeah,
this issue, and see if there's anything here.
To Robert's credit, I have not looked at it for that note since him and I spoke about that, so. That was one item. The other item was they're looking and they're finalizing everything, including streetlights inside the development. They made mention that the plan shows 2 out at the very entrance near Crisscross Road, but they don't have, they didn't install electric to that point from the development. It's kind of a loose request for a waiver, I think, but I think the plans show lighting, and then he mentioned, well, we usually can pull one off a pole that's out there. I think we're leaning on that, but I'd assume that if it's at the end of a development like that, near the school, we should push towards that direction.
Yeah, I would think so too.
But
That's what was agreed upon, I think you stay with that.
that was kind of the direction I leaned down, but, okay. So again, there's gonna be the work coming up soon for that, so I think they're gonna be looking for escrow releases and moving into the maintenance period in the next few months here. But
Are we in agreement though to leave the island, to leave it there? Is that?
Yeah, I'm okay with it if somebody else will take care of the sidewalk.
Yeah, I agree, I think that's,
Yeah, the sidewalks is the big thing.
I think we can handle that.
but they had asked about taking it out, right, the whole.
yeah, because I guess in previous developments, in the agreements, they didn't have very strong language saying that they couldn't take it out or something along those. From what they were describing, it was a very narrow corridor between the median and the other curb. Here, I think you could probably squeeze 2 cars through it. Maybe not 2 large trucks, but
That's pretty wide.
they're larger than,
Yeah.
I think, the situation they ran into previously is what.
I think you leave it there and try to get them to maintain it. School.
Well, if we get the school to do the sidewalk, we'll try to get them to do the median as well. But if they won't mow the grass, but they take care of the sidewalk, is that something you can live with, or?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
I mean, I think we should try to get the school to take care of everything, but I'm not sure. I think we can force them to take care of the sidewalk. I'm confident in that, but the grass is another question.
Let's ask them nicely, you build it up.
Hopefully, maybe it's not a gray area in the plans of the agreement, have something, but
But who's gonna, is it time to talk to the school, or is that something?
I think we should talk to them sooner than later.
why don't I look at the plans then, and if there's nothing there, then I'll send an email around and say,
That's the first thing. See
no leg
if there's any guidance in the plan.
It's all up.
And were they doing something with the crosswalks there as well? Was there something
Yeah,
they were
but-
supposed to?
when they get in there and they start doing the final paving and any painting they have to do, they're gonna hit crosswalks as well. I don't know. Yeah, when we first discussed it, it just wasn't the time of year to be painting the road, sure, they kind of passed at that time. You only have two other things. One, the street work. As far as timing goes, it looks like we're probably gonna have H&K in sometime just after the 4th of July or beyond. At this point, there's a period of time there that we're trying to avoid up until the 4th of July because of property, I believe, was a blueberry season. We didn't really want to take a couple days away from what is exactly
Cut the
property.
entrance off there.
Yeah, portion of that, so H&K is fine to
They're
work
okay with
around the schedule, yeah. And then the only other thing, we talked about the sinkholes on the basins out here. I had gotten out to take a look at them and found that they did, at least the one at the medical property there, they had done a flowable fill fix.
Oh, did they do
So there was a pipe in the middle of the pond that they repaired that's still kind of suspended, even though they repaired it. Maybe they didn't, maybe that's the way it looked since, but they poured concrete in the hole, graded a little bit.
As long as the capping is big.
They haven't cleaned it up yet. I think that last storm may have kind of eroded around the concrete a little bit. Hopefully it's still sealed, but they did do something on that one. I didn't look at the other two. There was one on the funeral property and then the one across the street from it, but
I thought I saw some excavation at the funeral.
I thought so too. I just couldn't slow down
I'm
by
always
the time I kept
dodging
seeing
traffic.
it. So that there was some progress there, but I guess we'll just kind of, when I get a chance, I'll stop by, keep an eye on it. If they don't do
Yeah.
anything, then we'll say something, but
I don't know how this widening project's gonna affect any of that too.
It'll change the drainage requirements again.
Oh, I don't know the scope of it, but from what I'm being told with the people I've talked to, the PennDOT engineers, they're gonna kind of do a waggle thing between, this isn't gonna be a straight shot, there's gonna be some turns in this to slow people down.
oh no, the stretch before the bypass.
Yeah, for this new thing before it's gonna be straight once they get through the last circle here. But prior to that, they're gonna,
Is this the last circle?
this is the last, well, it's the last circle for now. Till they get one on the other end of the bypass, because circles are the new solution for everything. You have a problem, you put it in a
Well,
circle.
that's what I was saying. They could just put a circle every quarter mile and that's.
That's pretty much what it's gonna be going west from here, or south, I should say.
And that's
Because there's gonna be 4 in a row there.
if you meet warrants for a traffic signal, you have to evaluate it for a traffic circle first.
Oh, yeah.
And say that can't work before you can move ahead with the traffic signal.
So you think there's gonna be circles of Pleasant Hill, Richmond, all of the.
That's correct.
Yep.
I heard that. Pleasant Hills and Richmond are both gonna get circles.
Yeah. I think there's gonna be
Yeah,
4 in a
puts
row
it
there
after
after
this
this.
one.
You're gonna get dizzy till you get to 73.
Yeah.
Never
And
been
I hate to-
on Fleetwood Landing Road.
I hate to keep bringing up things, but there was a not an official complaint, but the resident that has the farm to the east of Glad Tidings Church, there was some debris kind of pushed onto the edge of the field that he had a concern with and had asked us to look into it. There really wasn't action the first time we mentioned it to them. And he did talk again. Craft Code had actually stopped out, talked to him as well. But as of today, the the church has actually pushed it back onto the property. I haven't seen it, I just got the email saying, we've done that, does this satisfy what you're looking for? They've been receptive. I mean, that's the good thing now that the church is fully aware of the situation. I think they don't want to create tension between their neighbor and them.
Who is the property owner? Do you know?
I don't remember. Do you
I have
remember
his name in the office, but I don't remember who it was.
I can't, yeah.
I'm just curious.
I can probably tell you before the meeting's over.
I can tell you what it'll cost you $50 and a cheesesteak.
I can cover the cheesesteak if anybody wants to get rid of it.
It's Bill Yuli.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I spoke to him on Friday, and then it kind of trickled into the church saying, well, as soon as the weather is nice, we'll take care of it. So I think that's what they did today. But just since it was kind of an informal complaint, but
They should take care of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
oh yeah. So no, that's all I have. I'm sorry.
That's all right, thanks, Scott.
All right, solicitors report.
I have one question for you, and that is, on account number 1056, Woodson Schaefer, we have a judgment against them. We sent a letter to them saying, we are prepared to take the next step of a sheriff's sale of personal property. Don't you want to come in and talk to the board about the payment plan?
And that's the one we talked about last time.
Yeah, we said we'd give him another month, and I think we gave him another chance.
Didn't work?
We haven't heard, you haven't,
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't want to go this far, but I don't know, we have a choice.
I mean, it costs money, but I also think you need to have a reputation in the community that you enforce these charges, otherwise.
Why?
it's-
Yeah.
So I'm looking for your authorization to initiate a sheriff's sale of personal property.
I think it's,
I think we have to, we gave him how many chances now, kept extending.
Again, there's expenses with this. If they step forward and say, now you got our attention, we want to do a payment plan, I would add those charges to what they
Sure.
owe. That'll probably, add another $1,000 to this.
you need a motion for that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I make a motion, we take this to the next level and, go move forward with the sheriff's sale.
I was second.
All in favor?
Thank you. Do you have any questions or anything else in the report? I mean, we also, we're looking at this Wells Fargo thing. I'm not really worried about that because they're gonna sell property.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We'll get our money. I don't want to spend money chasing the bank.
Right.
Any other questions?
Got it.
It's actually a good report.
Yeah, things have straightened out, we went through that COVID period, where we had a lot of outstanding, it's pretty well straightened out now. So I'll check my notes, if there's anything else. Oh, yeah, I do have something else. The Fleetwood Bible Church, this kind of relates to the next topic. But I want to jump in on this. I've had some discussions with Scott and with the solicitor for the Fleetwood Authority about trying to get this moving. And the authority had some questions about, some conditions. And they were, and I don't know if this came from the authority, if it was Scott, but in any event, there's a possibility of a couple of additional lots that could eventually be connected. And Scott says, they ought to upsize the line by 1/2 inch or something, and that would add enough capacity to pick up these additional 3 properties if they ever want to connect
These are properties in the neighborhood.
in the neighborhood. Right. So what Scott and I talked about is, this should be the church's responsibility to build this. It should be a requirement of the permit. And if anybody ever wants to connect, then it would have to be dedicated at that time. But up until the time that anybody else wants to connect, it ought to be the church's responsibility to maintain it as a sort of a fancy lateral.
Right.
If that concept is agreeable with you, I think that could be handled all through the sewer permit for the project. And I have draft agreements from the authority to add the church property both to the water service list and to the sewer service list. Now, we hadn't talked about them being on the water service in my recollection. I thought we were just talking about the sewer service. So I don't know what the circumstances of that are. Do you know if the church wants to be on the Fleetwood water, or if that's just something that the authority brought up on their own?
First thing I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard.
I think I saw a plan at some point that showed 2 laterals going down.
Water and sewer. Because, yeah, the waiver
But I-
plan that Stolzfus brought in, Nick, yeah. Do you think it was on that plan?
I think it might have shown, I think it might have,
All right.
and I don't know if it was just concept at that point in time when they showed it, just this limit of disturbance hypothetically for the services, or I don't know.
All right. Well, it seems like Nick is trying to keep this project moving, so I was hoping that we could take some action on this tonight. What I would suggest is the following, that you approve having the connection constructed to the specifications that Scott recommends as part of the permitting of that project. That would be part 1. Part 2 would be to approve the addition of the church property to the water service agreement if we can confirm that that's what the church wants, and I'll reach out to Nick and confirm that. And also any other comments that the solicitor might have, because I just got this agreement about an hour and a half ago. And then the last thing would be to approve the water service agreement to add this property to the authority. Did I say water? The sewer service agreement. So anyway, those are the 3 things. So you want to do one at a time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with all 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good. You want to plan for the future, for
Right.
make it a little bit larger, and you can add on later. I mean, that just makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, nothing wrong.
Now's the time to do it.
So you want to do that under 3 separate motions?
Yeah, so the first motion would be to approve the connection of the Fleetwood Bible Church to the township's sewer collection system that goes to Walnut Town, with the specifications being approved by the township sewer engineer as part of the permitting process.
All right, I'll make that motion that we accept that with the township engineer's recommendations.
I'm second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second motion would be, I'm going to do the sewer first, to approve the amendment to the sewer service agreement with Fleetwood to allow this property to be connected and to flow sewer to Fleetwood.
I'll make a motion that we approve that amendment.
I'm second.
All in favor?
Let me tweak that a little bit, just because there were some things Scott wanted to add about how we calculate an ETU. He has some wording for that. So I would just say subject
Subject to
to,
Scott's
subject
language.
to the, wording satisfaction of the solicitor and the engineer. That would be part of the motion.
Okay, we'll make that part of the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You got this all, Jen?
Yeah. That's why there's a tape recorder there.
Well, this is why they want us to write our motions out in advance. And then the third one would be to approve the water extension agreement, subject to solicitor and engineer, technical review, and confirming that the church wants to be connected to public water.
I'll make a motion, we approve the water service agreement, subject to those parameters.
I will second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
And I realize none of this is on the agenda, so we probably should amend the agenda to add the Fleetwood private church.
I'll make a motion, we amend the agenda to cover the topics we just discussed.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
No problem. Stick back. I guess we have to figure out what to do with this.
Yeah, this generator.
Did you read the last part, the last line? Delivery over here.
So it sounds like we don't have a choice besides
Yeah, I would say at this point, we just go ahead. Put the rental unit.
rental we have, yeah, because you won't get it for a year anyway, even if we decided to go ahead and order a
I
new
don't
50
think you're gonna
kilowatt.
like.
Yeah, I'd be good with that, I don't think we have a choice. Whereas we got it, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and get this rental generator and get moving forward with this project. Go ahead.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. I think we can decide later on if we want to put a permanent one,
Yeah.
if that's in our budget, if we want to do that.
Jen, can you reach out to Scott and let him do, we'll go down the rental route and just get it done. Yeah, I think that was, everything here was covered. Folks, had a lot of,
But I was making notes while you were talking about this. You're gonna approve the rental of the generator, but you're also gonna get the replacement motor? too?
yeah, I think we covered that last time. didn't we? Yeah,
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure.
I'm just not sure if we're going to put a generator in here.
yeah, there was just some debate as to which way to go.
But with the new generator in a year, we got to do something.
A year, that's a short lead time to leave this day and age. It's ridiculous. All right, and then he just goes on, basically gives you a good old turn back going on.
Yeah, I think everything else is
Yeah,
taken care of.
and he does bring up the Fleetwood Bible Church. No constable activity.
I think he said the solicitor was supposed to reach out to me. I haven't heard from him.
You know, the irony of it is that whole chemical thing is after we go through all this, I'm not certain we can reach any agreement on rate. Certainly I'll be not for nothing anyway. Someday we're gonna have to do something. We'll wait for that someday.
Might be something to apply for a grant. So
Yeah, that's what it would take, because that would get enormously expensive. So discharge it, the whole thing would just would run into just the design work to do that would be incredibly expensive. Alrighty, Miscellaneous business, we have none. So we'll move on to the solicitors. Not the solicitor, we got him. The road master. Robbie. I look at what you did here.
The only things I have to add is the 550 didn't sell on municipal bid, which we sort of maybe talked about relisting it.
Yeah.
Are we gonna keep the same reserve price or?
I thought.
Yeah, that's kind of what Brian was leaning toward. He would know better the values of the truck.
I don't know that, I mean, we got within a couple $1,000s of it, so I don't know, we should really lower the reserve at this point. Let's relist the same reserve, and we have the right, again, to, accept.
See what
that
happens.
bid if we do.
We're not paying a buyer's fee or anything like that, but the person bidding is paying a 9% buyer's fee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just because we think we can get 18 for it, somebody's not gonna bid 18.
Right.
Because they're gonna be paying 19.5.
Yeah.
In the end. So just keep that in mind, but if you guys wanna keep it at 18, we can.
Let's start at 18.
Relist it.
And then you're gonna advertise that again?
Can we, at the same time, we have our new broom, power angle broom is in.
Okay.
And ready to be picked up. I was going, if we were going to re-advertise stuff for municipal bid, I'd like to advertise to put our old broom on municipal bid,
Okay.
since obviously there's no sense to keep two. I don't know if we want to put a reserve on that or not. It's pretty well shot. We already replaced the bristles once and they're due to be replaced again, but I don't
Is
even.
it functional?
Yes. I'm pretty sure we bought that used before I started here. It was purchased used. Or no, it wasn't. Because we got the skid loader maybe 6 years ago. It was probably like 5-6 years old to us, but it was bought somewhere that was used. I'm not sure where.
I would probably just list it.
Get what we can for it.
And then where do we stand with the Pheasant Run pipe project?
Well, we have a price in mind. I talked to Scott with it briefly before the meeting. I think the next step now is to have Gary go to the utilities and say, tell us where the pipes actually are and how deep they are. And then, get a second opinion on them, and then we'll just go from there and set up a date.
Okay. My other question is, maybe Chris can help us with this, is there's a concrete driveway that we're going to potentially be going through. We have to cut on either.
On that project?
Yes, we'll have to probably cut on either side or just rip out from the road to the furthest point of the cut and re-pour concrete. Is the township going to be responsible for that, or who is going to do that before we get too far into starting everything?
Well, is this within the right of way or outside the right?
I'm pretty sure the whole project is within the right of way, other than final grading and seeding and strawing. But what we're physically cutting with the driveway, I'm pretty sure would be within the right of way.
And we're gonna put a drain pipe under that driveway, is that it?
Yeah.
I believe that it would be the township's responsibility because it's part of the stormwater project. Even though it's within the right of way, like for example, when we do paving projects, and you have paved driveways, you feather the street into the driveway so that, you don't charge the resident to make their driveway meet the new grade of the road. I mean, I kind of feel like it's the township's the one that's destroying their driveway or affecting their driveway with this project. I mean,
I kind of feel the same
Yeah, if
way.
it's in the right of way, I can't, I would think so.
If we disturb it, we should repair it. And it's not, I mean, it's that big a project.
No.
Are the rest of them just like a paving or is it stone?
There, that's the only driveway.
That's the only driveway.
That's the only driveway.
Yeah.
Of course, it has to be concrete.
that stuff doesn't wash away because there's too much water down.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, they normally don't. But, yeah, I would say we just, let it settle real well. And then, if something you guys wanna do it, and if not, we'll find somebody to do it.
Right. That's all I have really.
Are you done on Factory?
With the pipes, we did a base repair today. Maybe in the next week or two, depending on the weather, we'll work on Perry.
The pipe works, water was flowing
I
through
think
it yesterday, pretty good.
It seems fine, yeah. They had, Denny Beck had a concern that the pipe wasn't deep enough.
Yeah,
We didn't go back far enough, which I talked with them, and we ended up taking the transit out, and from, well, you know exactly, I'm not sure if you guys know exactly where we are at the Factory Tree Farms at Perry Lane where that intersection is. We replaced the pipe there, and anyway, I shot it with the transit, and there was a slight hump in front of the pipe, which I told him that we would address if it wasn't working. He did a little something there. Then I also went back about 100 feet up his waterway, and there's about a 50 to 75 foot stretch where it's absolutely flat. And he's concerned that the water is ponding there and his trees are gonna flood, and I don't know if we should be going back that far or if we're just gonna wait and see how it is, but I think he was okay with, he did a little bit of tuning there, it looks like, and
I
we were
stopped
there.
and talked to him while he was doing that.
Okay,
And he's okay with it the way it is. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, he's pretty happy with it. the way
yeah.
it is.
So I told him that if we saw a problem, if there was something there, that
We
we could address it when we were redoing the intersection.
But it was flowing beautifully yesterday.
Yeah, I
It was
drove.
fine.
I drove there Saturday, midday, afternoon, when it was raining pretty good, and I didn't see any ponding or anything there.
Oh, it looked real good. That head wall you put in there looks real good. He was happy with it. That's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's pretty much all I had.
Good. Alrighty. Secretary's report. Payment of the bills.
Okay. General fund, check numbers 10386 to 10441, including EFTs for $243,193.01.
I make a motion to pay it.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
State fund, we had no checks. The light fund, check number 2147, in the amount of $650.15.
I'll make a motion that we pay it.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sewer fund, check numbers 2944 to 2956, including EFTs for $84,721.18.
I'll make a motion that we pay it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Walnut Town Fire Escrow, check numbers 2147 and 2148, in the amount of $37,769.50.
I'll make a motion that we pay it.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Virginville Fire Escrow, check number 2148, in the amount of $769.50.
I'll make a motion that we pay it.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And just a reminder, we did close out the Penvest account, and we are taking all of the Penvest loan money out of the sewer fund now.
Good.
So those funds are coming out of there. We closed out the Penvest account with the bank. The additional funds, I did speak, the additional accounts that we have between the escrows and the accounts that we have in our QuickBooks account. I spoke with Roxanne. You'll see on the chart of accounts that I have copied for you guys, the 248 accounts, the 01-248. Those are all the accounts that we open if someone happens to come in with a land development or holding tanks, stormwater fees, any type of fees whatsoever. We open up a 248 account. Along with, we used to open up a separate escrow account. That's why we had so many different bank accounts. According to Roxanne, as long as we keep opening up the individual 248 accounts for all the land developments, we can actually reconcile the 248s in QuickBooks instead of having the separate escrow accounts. She said as long as you keep them separate on the 248 accounts in the QuickBooks, you don't need the extra escrow accounts. So if you would like to close the extra escrow accounts, we can do that.
You would have them all on the general ledger then?
Yes. Yep.
I never saw the wisdom in having the separate
I
accounts.
think that makes sense, as long as
Right,
she's okay with that.
yes.
Yeah, I would be fine with
Okay.
just combining everything.
The only thing that she said was, I had asked her, we have the equipment fund that we have separate from the general fund. Now, if you look in your chart of accounts in here, I just have to find out which page that's on. Bear with me 1 second. For purchasing of the trucks. The capital equipment purchase, which is account 01430, it's on page 6. Whenever we would purchase a vehicle, everything would be coming out of that separate bank account of the equipment fund, and the money would be transferred into this 43740 account and done that way. I asked her if it was possible, since we have the $100,000 that we budgeted, if we can just put it in there. She said it's almost better to keep that separate account, just because it's kind of like a savings account per se. That way it's out of the actual general funds. That way if you want to buy a truck, the funds are in the savings account, you just transfer it over.
So you're referring to that equipment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that would be up to you if you want to keep it that way, we can keep it that way,
I
but,
think we should.
okay. That would be the only extra account that we can keep the other way, but the other ways, the escrows, we can get rid of and just keep those in the 248 accounts.
Do we need a motion for that?
All right. So we're gonna make a motion and we're gonna keep the equipment,
Correct,
account as it is
correct.
and
Do away with the escrows.
do away with the escrows. I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I will second.
All in favor?
that was all I had.
All right, anything from anybody else? Public participation? Not much public left. I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think I did mention this.
It's not live.
The website.